Okay, well, welcome to the .NET Consortium, Indy.NET Consortium. How many people here are new? Sweet, welcome, welcome. You're not totally new. You're going to be at Code and Coffee tomorrow, right?
Yeah, I mean, I just haven't been to this meetup yet.
No, it's all good, it's all good. See my smiling face. So I'm Ari Rahimzadeh. You can just call me Ari, it's easier. And I'm one of the organizers, along with Brent and Tim and Dave, and we all run this. And we're really excited to have everyone here. Tonight we have our quarterly lightning talks. So what we're trying to do is, rather than every single month have a particular topic, opening it up so that at least a few times a year you have a chance to talk about the things that matter to you. So you can come in about some technology that you've learned about, be it .NET or even something else, and talk about it. So for example, Victor's going to talk about high performance computing, I'm sure. So we're trying to do this every quarter. That's why they're called the quarterly lightning talks. And this is a great turnout, so this is awesome. I'm very happy. So the first time we did it, we had a great turnout. The second time we did it, we had like 7 people, but I think it's because everyone was on family vacations. It was like Independence Day around that time, all that stuff. And here we are, we've got another good turnout. So that's good, because I was worried. I didn't know where are we going, because I only had a sample of 2. So anyway, a special thank you to our sponsors. Number 1, Theoris. They brought the pizza. And to be fair, Theoris is not a pizza company. They're a staffing firm, and they're good people. They're good people. So they do more than bring pizza to meetups. This is good. This is good. Of course, that's how we met. I'm like, is this all you do? And they're like, no, we're really more than this. So I'm like, oh, sweet, awesome. That might not be the full story. 1150 Academy. I don't know if anyone here at 1150 graduate or going at 1150? Great. Who here is not one of those but has heard of 1150? And who hasn't heard of 1150? Oh, okay. So 1150 is a coding academy. So just to check, have you heard of Kenzie Academy? Sweet. So that way, you haven't heard their competition. Here I am talking about it, and it's recording, and it's going to go on YouTube. So I just did like a free advertisement for both of them. So it's cool. It's cool. Nothing wrong with Kenzie. They did great at the hackathon. Did you go to the? That was great. Good job for you guys. Were you at Kenzie?
I am actually a student software engineering coach.
Oh, sweet. So that was great. It was fun watching you guys win. I was so happy. So I'm deeply rooted in 1150 Academy. Those of you who know me would know how far back I go into that. So I was talking with them. I'm like, bring some people in, because you've got great people too, and you can win stuff like cool gift cards. And then of course Ozcode. So that's a debugging tool, and we'll be giving a license of Ozcode away at the end of this. So I'll be handing the tickets out, so don't freak out about how you get into that. It's a simple drawing. So Ozcode does for debugging what ReSharper does for writing code, and I don't mean make it slow. Ozcode is phenomenal. Once you have it installed, you're like, what happened? Why don't I have this installed? Like when you're on someone else's machine. You're like, all the little tooltips and everything that show me what's going on, they're all gone. Yeah, it's because you don't have Ozcode. Kind of like how you'll miss ReSharper when you don't have ReSharper, unless you're in a hurry. Someone will think that's fun. And then, of course, Launch Fishers for giving us the theater tonight. So that, yay for them. I wish Rachel was here, because she actually called and told me, hey, everything's set up for the Apple TV. Here's how you switch it. Because otherwise we wouldn't have been using this, because I don't know where to switch any of that stuff. So she actually went out of her way to call me. So thanks to Rachel. Rachel, if you're watching, that was for you. So, very excited about tonight. Who's presenting? Who's presenting? I am. I'm one of them. Boop, 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 boop. Anyone else want to present? No? I'm just making sure, so you have an opportunity. All you got to do is write your name on the board. We could have more. You could add an 8, a 9, a 10. Yeah, it's okay. You don't have to do it right now. Don't feel pressured. Do it. And who's gonna go out getting beer and such later? 1, 2, 3. You're not getting beer, but you'll get something. I'm just giving you a hard time. I should stop, should
At some point.
When you're 21, I will. Okay, so we got 1, 2, 3 people, 4, 5. Anyone else going? You're not going tonight, Brent?
Oh, I raised my hand.
Oh, did you? Sorry. I didn't see. I was just paying attention. Okay, cool. All right, and yeah, and then you're like wishy-washy on it.
Maybe.
So. Okay, cool. Been drinking 5 nights in a row. Should be a 6th. Okay. That was like my last meeting, but I was on vacation. Great. So the way lightning talks work, for those of you that haven't done this before, you present 5-10 minutes. Any topic that you like. It looks like we've got some great topics tonight. Nick Perry's going to be talking about Nick Perry. Celebrity discussion. And then that's it. So does anyone have an issue with my recording them? Okay, I'm just going to ask, making sure, and now I've got it recorded, that you said it's okay. So sweet. Let's see. Is there anything else? No. Okay. Yay. All right, so we'll get started. I'm first, so that because I'm already up here. Everyone has HDMI, right? For their laptop if you're doing a presentation?
I don't have HDMI. I have VGA.
Oh, well, you might need a copy. I don't know if they have like a VGA connector.
It's cool.
Oh, okay. But if you copy it to a thumb drive or something.
Oh yeah, then I could throw it up on someone else's.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I can just plug mine in. But yeah, it looks like they only have USB. Why am I saying USB-C? They only have HDMI here.
Okay.
Yeah. Good, I'm glad I asked. If you want to send it to me, I'm happy to put it on mine.
Okay.
And then you can just use my laptop and you'll be fine. So we'll be in good shape. Cool. Okay. Can everyone hear me when I don't have this?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I'm going to stop pulling out that thing. So one thing, hey, what's up? Good to see you. Yeah, another organizer. Yay, Tim. So one thing I wanted to talk about tonight was Xamarin Essentials. So how many people here are mobile developers? Nobody. This is cool. I'm sure this totally applies to everyone then. How many people have heard of Xamarin? Yay. How many people have tried Xamarin? Okay. How many people want to try Xamarin? Cool. How many people have done any mobile development whatsoever, even if it's not your... Okay, sweet. So, a little bit about Xamarin. I guess I could take the PowerPoint slide off. So Xamarin, there's two primary options you have. You have Xamarin, which you could build an iOS app or an Android app, or a UWP app, all in C#. So whether it's Android, iOS, UWP, Mac, you can build it all with C#. So all the same libraries as on the iOS and Mac SDKs, same with Android, same with UWP. You have access to all the native libraries. The only difference is that you're writing everything in C# instead of C#, Swift, Java, or whatever, insert whatever you want, like Golang or what's the new one that they're using for Android? Scala? It's not Scala. What is it?
Kotlin.
Kotlin. Thank you. Yeah, I always forget that name, probably because I don't know it. Don't know the language. Know the name, don't know the language. So that can run into a lot of issues. So when you have to write your code in multiple languages, what's the first thing that you get automatically? Technical debt.
Yeah.
Because you've written it a different way in every platform, because you're targeting different libraries, using a different language. So threading is different, synchronization is different, collections are different, API calls are different. I mean, and every time you need to make a change, if you have an iOS and Android app, and one's written in Swift and one's written in Kotlin, and maybe the desktop application for Windows, UWP is in C#, you got to write the same implementation over and over and over again. That sucks, but if you wrote it all in C# and you could target .NET, you could reuse all that code. So all your business logic could be reused. So Xamarin enables that. So you get a native iOS and Android app, you get to access all the libraries, and you can access all your existing business logic because it's already C# as well. pretty cool. So I think with that approach, you get like 83% code reuse. 83%. Imagine if you got 83% of your time back on any project. Now, what's the issue with that? Well, if you only wrote your Android app, your iOS app, your UWP app, etc., with Xamarin, just using the base Xamarin stuff, you're still writing the UI for Android, so your AXML, your iOS, you're doing your storyboards, your zibs, your nibs, etc. UWP, you're doing your XAML. On your Mac, still zibs, nibs. That's a lot of work. So you still have interface inconsistencies. And anyone who knows when you have to work with the UI and UX teams, there's a lot of money that can be sunk into that. So if you want, Xamarin also offers the ability for you to abstract the UI just like it abstracts all the rest of the platforms, all the business rules, and that's Xamarin Forms. So it can actually abstract the UI and you get north of 90% code reuse. So that's Xamarin and Xamarin Forms. So what's Xamarin Essentials? How many people have written an ASP.NET website, built an ASP.NET website? Okay, who hasn't? Okay, so most of you have written one. So what's one of the most awesome things from the out-of-the-box template in ASP.NET? It's just already done for you. What?
It's an identification.
Yep, identification, authentication, authorization, etc. It's already built. You start with a template that already has an identity provider. Anyone here who's been coding since prior to .NET and its cool templates knows that you spent a few weeks building your identity, your authorization, authentication, and so forth providers just to get them working. And you would copy and paste them from, blah, 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 blah. So Microsoft solved that. So Xamarin Essentials does something similar in the sense that it takes a lot of the things that you would normally do when building an application and gives you common libraries that work cross-platform. So, by installing Xamarin Essentials, you get camera access, media library access, geolocation access, build access, operating system access, mapping access. And all you do is, there's a whole bunch of stuff. I'll go through the list real quick just to whet your appetite, but that was just to whet your appetite. And all you do is make the same call across all of your code, and it automatically makes the right native call to do what you need done. Asynchronously, and all in one nice tested fashion. Cool part is, it frees you up to build the rest of your application. If you need geolocation services, anyone here written an Android app? If you have, you've wrestled with Android permissions. If you've written an iOS app, you've wrestled with various other issues, like, also permissions, right? Or running things on a UI thread, okay, which is a new thing since iOS 11. If you've done any iOS development, all of a sudden your app started breaking with iOS 11, because if you didn't do things on the main thread, it went boom. Sorry. So your users would update, and then everything would blow up. Sucks. So what Xamarin Essentials does is standardizes a lot of the stuff that you end up needing to do with all of your applications. So just to give you an idea, I'll give you the list, and then I'll show you a quick code example. I don't want to spend everybody else's time and stuff. So I can always answer more questions. Everyone see my screen? All right, accelerometer. So receiving acceleration data, barometer. It automatically will tell you if you don't even have that capability. So your battery, what's your battery levels? Subscribing to events based on battery levels. Cross-platform, keep in mind, you don't have to know how it works on Android or iOS or UWP or Mac or what have you. Even Tizen. So if you want to build apps for a TV, or even an Apple Watch app. Nothing stops you with Xamarin from building an Apple Watch app because you're building a native app. It's not like React Native where, oh, yeah, okay, there's certain things that you can do, but everything else you can't because it's totally abstracting everything. These are real iOS apps, real Android apps with all the native libraries. So you can do anything you want. But this is like, oh no, I don't have to go look for 100 NuGet packages. It's all in here. Your Compass, checking for connectivity. And it's super cool too. You can say, do I have internet or do I have connectivity? So am I on the Starbucks portal and I'm waiting to log in? It can tell you. And it's only getting better over time, and instead of and it's all open source, by the way. So you can contribute to this if you like. They're always accepting pull requests. Shake detection, device information, handling emails, handling messaging, handling the flashlight, geocoding, geolocation, gyroscope, a launcher, magnetometer, and for Android and iOS, it totally manages all the permissions for you. Just add the NuGet package and say, using Xamarin Essentials. That's how cool it is. So I'm going to give you a quick example of this. Let me know when you can see my screen. So, you should all be able, can everyone read that? So I wrote this one application that has geolocation capabilities built into it. So originally what I did, I wrote my own geolocation provider for iOS and my own geolocation provider for Android. So basically you can almost copy and paste code from Java and Swift and quickly convert it to C# because all the libraries are the same. And then I just inject the dependency per platform. So on my Android app, I'm not using dependency injection. I did service lookup. So I say, go get me the implementation of iGeolocation provider. I implement it in the Android side. The service lookup goes and gets me the Android code or the Android implementation of that. And I did the same thing for iOS. Did the same thing for UWP, which is great, except over time, all those interfaces, not the interfaces, but the implementations change. There's capabilities I don't have. There's things I didn't know. So things would break. I'd have to fix it. Well, Xamarin Essentials is always being updated by a team that's dedicated to it. So I switched. I said, why am I doing this all myself? And I did Xamarin Essentials. So here's how easy it was. When I want to update my geolocation, I just say, now keep in mind, this isn't on the Android or the iOS side, this is in my Xamarin Forms project. So I abstract the UI. I'm in the part where I'm going to go and list how far away all these locations are. And I want to update each one of the locations. I want to update them based on how far away you are from your current position. So I need to know what your current location is. So I say, new geolocation request with medium accuracy. That's how easy it is. And I say, await. Yeah, async await is one of the best things in mobile development. Geolocation, get location async, boom. That's how easy it was for me to add geolocation in my application. I check, hey, if location is null, here's my logging service, and I logged an event. I'd love to go into application insights at some point, because application insights is the bomb. If you've never seen it, go look at it. Not application insights, App Center, Microsoft App Center. And its ability to track a user's usage of your app and actually charts it out. Where they started, every element in your application that they used, to where they stopped using it. Free. That's a whole different thing. It has feature not supported exceptions, feature not enabled exceptions. So you can alert your user, hey, that's not really supported on your device. The app supports it, but your device doesn't. But it's already written in a good way that you would want as a developer. Normally you would do this all yourself. But look at how much time that saved. And you didn't have to write 3+ implementations just to get it working. What was the other thing that I thought was pretty cool? Place mark? Oh yeah, like for mapping. Remember I said you had mapping? This is my last example. Well, mapping is different on iOS and Android and Windows, etc. So how you launch the mapping application will change whether the driving directions are provided. iOS, this breaks all the time. If you write your own implementation, Apple loves to change how the URI works or how maps will respond. Android's been relatively consistent. I've been happy about that. But I'll get a response after like iOS, who knows, like 12 will come out. It doesn't work anymore. I'm not getting driving directions. What'd you break? I'm like, what do you mean, what did I break? Apple changed it. Well, with Xamarin Essentials, I just update Xamarin Essentials. Done. Takes care of it all. So all I do is say, okay, here's a location, the latitude and longitude of it. I create a place mark, so basically detailing the location, its postal code, and the thoroughfare. I had to learn a little bit about this because of the naming. Then I can say, oh wait, map open async. Takes care of everything. Just launches the app, launches the Maps app. On iOS, it has that stupid little small text on the top left corner of your screen that you can barely touch. On Android, you can just hit back. Man, I missed that back button on iOS. But the cool thing is that it's all taken care of for you. So I can concentrate on my code. I need mapping capabilities. I need my temperature. I need my location. I need emailing. I need messaging. Using Xamarin.Essentials, I just have it. Any questions? Yeah.
If you develop something in this, is there a fee you have to pay Microsoft?
Nope. Totally free. And it's open source.
And so who's doing the quality control on the code that gets added to this?
Microsoft. So if you want to do a pull request.
How is Microsoft making money off of this?
Well, you're using their platform. It makes Xamarin better. So more and better apps of higher quality get built. And their team uses it too. So it doesn't hurt anyone. Got open source software, how does anyone make money off of it? Plenty of ways to make money.
It sells more OSs for Microsoft and stuff like
It
that.
sells the OS, it sells Visual Studio licenses, even though Visual Studio is free. For the community edition, it makes people use Microsoft's tools and platforms to build software. You may end up using Azure for a lot of stuff. And Microsoft's a huge player in the open source market. Sorry, in the open source side of things. I don't know what the proper way of saying that is. So it's not all about money. It's a little different than the Microsoft of the 90s. I mean, heck, anyone here use GitHub? Right? Microsoft. Did they suddenly start charging you for it? No. But if you think about it, Microsoft had a ton of their code in GitHub. All their open source stuff. So it would make sense for them actually to acquire GitHub because at least they can control that system doesn't go down. Imagine if someone had bought GitHub and suddenly started charging if you had more than like 3 repos. and Microsoft had to change where 70,000 developers were checking in their code. Well, that would be expensive. There'd probably be some whoopsies there. So it actually made sense for them to do that. Monetarily, just flow-wise, there's a lot of good reasons. So they make plenty of money on services now anyway. You got a question?
You answered it.
Oh, great. Any other questions? Yep. Cool, thank you. You need my, oh, cool. There you go. Yay. Does this thing keep recording? So far, so good. Oh, sweet. I didn't introduce you, so make sure you introduce yourself, Beth.
Oh, my wife's like.
I just noticed it said Beth. I was like, oh my gosh, I have a joke that I'm just going to insert.
Did everybody read the code? Like, they have a chance to-
I set mine to 200%. That was pretty
Probably need
readable.
to zoom in a little. 200?
Yeah.
Let me display it.
I think you can also do 150.
Yeah, I think I'll do that. That's.
Can you all see?
Yeah, is that okay? My name is Victor, and on the side, I work on a NuGet package that's open source and free called HPC Sharp. So high performance computing, kind of at C Sharp. And I've given a presentation, I think, in March on the library. So today I'll talk about kind of one little component that I've been working on lately and had some kind of discoveries and pains and share some pains with you. Oh, to use a microphone? Okay, I will try. Yeah, I speak pretty softly. Okay, so what I'll talk about is the complexity of actually adding numbers in C#, and it's actually adding numbers in any language. So I'll show you some pitfalls and then show you how the library I'm working on helps you and makes it easier. So here's an example of adding, if you declare, let's say you're wanting to add an array of logs. So let's look at the kind of the first line. So that's the line that we're looking at. So I've declared an array of longs, and longs are 64-bit integers. So this is, we're just going to add 1, 2, 3 together. So how do we do that? That should be pretty simple. It should be pretty trouble-free. So how do we do that? So link has a nice sum. So that's what the last portion of that line is. So we take an array, long array that we declared up above, and we say dot sum. And that's all it should really take. And then you go, what is this as parallel stuff? Well, that's to run multi-core. So if you want to run on multiple cores, if you have a quad core, Link has a really nice feature. You can say as parallel, so run this sum parallel. So that's beautiful. And that actually runs on my laptop, not this one, but the one I have at home, at 900 million ads per second. So that's pretty decent. C# is pretty quick. But where do you run into trouble? So one of the troubles, or I should say one of the things with sum, is that whatever data type you're summing, which is a long, that's what it returns for the sum. So it returns a long as the sum. And that's where the trouble kind of begins. So here's the trouble just adding two numbers. One is the maximum value that a long can have. What happens if you add a 1 to it? You just had a maximum value. How can you do that? And this will happen, right? If you got numbers, you don't know what you're gonna be faced with in a database. So what sum does is sum throws an exception. So it goes, hey, I'm gonna throw an exception because I can't give you a number that's bigger than the maximum. So that's what, as developers, that is what we're faced with. Now we have to deal with this problem. Or we have to plan for it and say, oh, my numbers are pretty small. I'm never gonna run into this issue. Or I'm gonna catch an exception. So how do we solve it? C# has actually some other, what we need is actually a bigger number to hold our sum. So how do we avoid it? Well, C# has a nice construct called big integer. And big integer is immutable, it has some other nice properties, but it grows as big as you need it to be. Okay, so let's use that. So we try to use it, and found out that big integer in link doesn't have a dot sum. You go, well, that's really annoying. So we have to use an aggregate, which makes it more complicated to use. I mean, the syntax is not exactly intuitive. So what do we do? Oh, plus, when we run big integer, our performance drops to 11 million ads per second. So we just dropped 80x by using this nice construct. And the reason why is big integer is a software data type. It is not a native data type on the processor. So now it's a software thing, it's a software algorithms, so it's a lot slower by 80x. So we could do a little bit better. So in HPC Sharp, oh, by the way, that's where we didn't do very well, is aggregate does not have as parallel support. Or if you add it, it doesn't actually speed up anything. So it doesn't speed up anything. So in HPC Sharp, I added support for that. So you can take basically a long array and sum it to a big integer. So one, you've avoided any kind of arithmetic overflow because the summation will be as big as it needs to be. And then, as you'll see, I had a little like par, little 3-letter word, and that one means multi-core. So basically, I implemented a multi-core version, and it runs at 36 million ads per second. So we're doing better. C# also has another data type that's bigger than 64 bits, called decimal, which is also beautiful. It actually has 96 bits. So you can use that one, it's bigger than 64 bits. So you can use that one. Okay, so let's see how fast we go with that one. So here's a sum. So here's a sum basically using lambda functions to where we basically, it's like a for loop, where we take every value, convert it to decimal first, and then call sum. So basically then the result that sum returns is a decimal. So we have a 96-bit result.
How fast was that?
It's long.
So decimal avoids rounding errors and stuff, right? That's why I always use it.
But for integers, it doesn't.
Well, that doesn't, yeah, okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's good for financial.
Sure.
And then for integers, this is beautiful for that. So decimal is actually.
Did you get one? I'll take it. It's not a speeding ticket from me.
Decimal runs at 140.
Still better.
So it's better. We're getting better. So it's about 4 or 5 times faster than the integer. Okay, so I'll switch now to ulongs because that's where I kind of found a really nice optimization. And I'm working on longs. So ulongs are unsigned versions of longs, still 64-bit, and you run into the same problem. If you have a max value and you add 1 to it, you still are exceeding the maximum. You're just unsigned. So in HPC Sharp, I built this kind of a monster of a long name. And what it does for unsigned long arrays, so 64 bits but just unsigned, it runs at 2.7 gigahertz. So no more mega, let's go to giga. So it runs quite a bit faster, even than the original was 900, I think is when we started. This one does everything in integer computation, so everything is natively computed. Even your arithmetic overflow is detected and dealt with inside. So it does everything in integer computation, and that's how it gets its speed. Plus it's multi-core. It also does SIMD instructions, so it does parallel instructions as well. And that's how it gets to 2.7 giga ads per second. And that's on my quad core. I ran it also, I happen to have a 14 core Xeon that has 4 memory channels, and it runs at 6 gigahertz on that. So we got speed up, we got safer code, quicker code, that you don't have to worry about overflow. And it returns, what it does for you longs is it returns a decimal. And I actually plan to return a big int as well, if you want that one, because inside it does all the integer arithmetic. Basically, what it does is it extends the arithmetic to another 64 bits. Basically, it deals with. So that's what it does. It does it all in native computation. So that's why I wanted to present.
Cool, thanks, very cool.
Did anyone not get a ticket? Oh, I'm sorry, I totally ignored you. But not on purpose.
All right, thanks, Ari, for having us. I haven't got a chance to introduce myself. My name is Paul Cosgrove. I'm a recruiter for Theater Services, who's here sponsoring the event. I know you guys came here to learn more about your craft, so I don't want to hear much from a recruiter, but still want to take the opportunity to really educate ourselves a little bit on what's happening in the marketplace and how we can be better resources for you guys. So I got some back scratchers here. Just wanted to pick your guys' brain.
Back scratcher?
Yeah, that's right. Scratch our backs. Hopefully we can scratch yours. So if you guys can just answer some of these questions so we can better understand how to be a better recruiter for this group right here. Because in all honesty, you guys are the most sought after employees in Indianapolis right now. So my background, I've been recruiting for about 13 years. Internal corporate recruiter for JPMorgan Chase for about 6 years, and then staffing for a while as well. And I've never seen a market and a skill set in such demand it is right now. And we're just not getting the amount of responses back that we think we should for a lot of the great opportunities we have right now. So just 6 questions right now, and I'll let you guys get back to topics at hand. So right now, when and how do you guys make a decision that it's time to move on, find the next opportunity? If anybody can raise their hand, and this is all confidential information.
Except it's on YouTube.
I mean, I could always pause it. I think anytime I've thought about that, it's usually, are the working conditions bad? And are they not going to get any better? I mean, knowing, especially in our line of work, that the sky is kind of the limit. I mean, everybody needs a senior engineer.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I don't know about junior engineers. I'd be curious to hear what you think about that. The people just starting, the 1150 folks, the Kenzie folks, etc. But like if communication isn't going to get better, if the work environment's not going to get better, if you feel like you're just kind of like banging your head against the wall, you have no reason to stick with that unless you have to.
Yeah.
I mean, I would think, be fair to yourself. But like any job, it's not just software development. We just have a little bit more, mobility, just because of our skill set is on high demand for now.
No, I appreciate you sharing that. A lot of people we talk to, it's a lot of what's resonated right now with what you said. People are, not happy with the culture, not happy with the environment, the work that they're doing isn't really there. But again, what part in the process can we get involved to better understand how we can be resources for you? So, Ari?
Oh, yeah.
There you go. Anybody?
Back scratcher.
What I hear,
Ooh, it has a massage.
already brought up for your level, but for people out of the academies, what I hear quite often is, I took this role and now I'm not learning. Mm-hmm. And I think in IT, it's all about what am I learning now? Where am I going next? So, to me, the second you get to the point where there's nothing new coming in, there's no new information, there's not a new bullet point on the resume, then it's time to call somebody. Never get stagnant in this role.
Okay. Anybody else want to talk about Nashville?
Well, I can't really speak from the role of a developer as of yet. I am currently retraining the software development, but I did kind of want to go more on Ari's point on how the market is for junior developers. Mm-hmm. Because from my understanding, there seems to be, like he said, sky's the limit for senior developers, and even to some extent mid-level developers have got a lot of leeway where they can go what they can do. But I've noticed that junior developers are really kind of at the glut where that's where you see the highest level of supply relative to demand, and where you can run into a situation where you can look at an application and a day later, over 20 people apply to it. And I wanted to get some more information from you about the role of junior developers and getting them acclimated into a tech environment, and then helping them to grow into what we would later see as mid-level and senior developers.
Yeah.
People have spoken.
No, it's something that I've seen really throughout my career. I mean, the reality is when it comes to, staff augmentation firms or workforce solutions or managed service providers, a lot of times hiring managers, want to know what type of immediate impact you can make. You start Monday, what can you get done by Tuesday? So that has to be conveyed through previous work experience. So I'm a straight shooter kind of guy, and that is the hardest part of IT, is getting your foot into the door and getting that first year of experience. Oftentimes, to be quite frank, it is going to be networking on your own behalf. So going to events like this, build relationships with hiring managers, because chances are, if they're going to hire a junior recruiter, they're most likely not going to go to a staffing agency and pay kind of the fees associated with that. Again, just to be frank. So this is one of the biggest hurdles when you're guys are getting your career started, is getting your foot into the door. Partnering with senior developers is going to be critical to that. Being able to work with people who are willing and want to coach you is also going to be critical to that. But it's something that I've always seen and experienced throughout my tenure in recruiting, and I think companies are getting a lot more flexible when it comes to years of experience with code assessment testing. Just because you have 10 years of experience doesn't mean you're senior, just because you have 2 years doesn't mean you're junior, so to say. So I think companies are getting a lot more creative as to why, especially here in Indianapolis. So I anticipate that changing in the near future, but it's still one of the hardest things to do right now.
My son graduated from 1150 in February or whatever. His name was Max. I don't know if any guys went to school with him, but I had a heck of a time I've been in this business a long time, and I could not get him a position. It was really hard to get someone to look at him and hire him. And he interviewed and he talked to some people, and nobody wants to hire someone that is a non-college graduate that just went to a boot camp kind of thing. Finally, someone called him and said, we don't normally hire people like you, but we're gonna interview, because they saw his resume, and they called him and said, we're gonna take another look at you. And they had him come in, and he had to write they gave him a 3-hour interview, and he had 2 hours was to write an MVC application, and the next hour was to talk to people. And he wrote the MVC application doing entity framework and SQL database stuff and all this kind of stuff. So I said, wow, this guy really knows what he's doing. So they hired him, but he's doing WordPress type websites right now, which isn't really .NET. But he's got full-time benefits, making $45K, doing pretty good for having no real college debt and stuff like that. So it took him 3 months, but it took a lot of stuff, and it took him doing work that he's not thrilled with, but he knows he's going to have a career in the future. I mean, the next door he kicks open will probably be $65K a year or something like that.
Certainly.
So I don't know if that helps, but you just have to stick it out, and it's hard to get people to look at junior or entry-level programmers. It's really hard to get a position that way.
What I've seen help junior people get success and get positions is taking on personal projects, like I'm sure your son probably did.
Yeah.
Creating a GitHub account and showing passion in what you do. I mean, if I'm talking to a candidate, and I can tell almost immediately if they're truly passionate about technology or not, and you'd be amazed how much soft skills have to come into play nowadays with hiring decisions. You're not just banging out code in the closet all day.
Yeah, my resume is 2 or 3 job positions, and most of it's all personal projects I've done on the side.
Yeah.
It works better that way for me.
So, I'm sorry, go ahead.
It's an interesting point, because I find, I've helped a lot of people try getting jobs, in this line of work, especially being new to it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm usually pushing, you gotta have projects that you can show off that aren't what everybody else in your boot camp or whatever did. And that's gonna make your skill better, because then you can actually go and speak from experience when you're at that interview. 1150 or Kenzie, etc., they've got their course curriculum. But if you're a new developer and you've just spent 3 months on that, and you never ventured outside of that comfort zone, that kind of safe playground, man, it's the real development world can be really hard. People don't give you clear guidelines as to what they want. It's like, hey, something's broken in production, go fix it. Well, what's wrong? I don't know, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what your day is like, and you're, as a junior to intermediate developer, those are the kind of problems that you're often going to be solving. It's not usually greenfield development, it's higher efficiency, lower cost. So you're a low cost developer, and they have a large backlog, they need people to go and just go through the motions and get stuff fixed. So, the personal projects thing, I couldn't stress enough how important that is, and converting things to like different languages is something I usually suggest. If something you don't know, convert it to something else, because at least you know the definition of done. But you can come back and it enforces the skill set, or it fortifies the skill set of problem solving. Which is the big issue that I've found with a lot of the junior developers, is they're not good problem solvers. Like, they get how to build, they can write a loop. They could put something together, given instructions. But, we can all do that. We go to IKEA.
Yeah.
But, the people who don't know what to do when, you're missing the screwdriver in the IKEA box, you gotta be able to venture out of that zone. And that's where I think, junior developers tend to, if you do that, you do a lot of that sort of stuff, you'll find it a lot easier getting to the jobs because you've already done problem solving before. So they'll be like, hey, I got this problem, could you fix it? Oh yeah, I've heard of something like that, or I know where I'd start. You're immediately usable on that team.
Okay. No, I appreciate everybody sharing.
That's a lot of truth. I have an 18-year-old son. He graduated with me, and he had a lot of personal projects that he enjoyed working on through his high school. He programmed in C++ predominantly, but that's what we presented. We presented samples of his code, and he's got 2 jobs. He's he's working 40 hours in one and over 20 in the other one. But I mean, so you can't find those.
And he's young, so you shouldn't do that.
All right, so moving on. So you identify that it's a bad environment, for whatever reason you wanted to make a move financially, fulfillment, what have you. Do you guys have a specific strategy how you're going to go about finding this next position? Is it I'm going to just network with my professional and personal network? Am I going to job boards? Am I working with recruiters? Like, I guess what is kind of the strategy you guys have if you guys have decided, it's time to make a move?
I called Nikki.
Yeah.
Straight up, I called her, and she gave me a recommendation, and then I did some of my own double checking, because I basically double check everything I hear, and then I was like, okay, that's great advice, and then I know that's a horrible answer, but that's
no, I work with a recruiter. I mean, I'm all about that. So
I think you just want a back scratcher.
At the first level, you should have 5 recruiters that you have talked to, that you know, that you trust, that you feel like, even if they're not placing you, because he's being honest, and I think I've told everybody I've met in this room, I'm probably not gonna be the one who places you, companies don't need to hire us for that, but in 3 to 5 years, I still want you to like me enough that you call me, that I'm one of those 5. So, having those recruiters calling me now, that should absolutely be fine to plan.
Yeah, but as a junior, it's best to call recruiters, just like you said. You guys aren't really gonna make a big cut if you find me a job, but what you can do is you can provide me 20 seconds of great advice, which I can then go act on.
Yeah.
But some people do need that straight up, hey, can you please find me a position and send me the link, and then I'll do the work. There's some people that need that too.
Yeah. Anybody else talk about strategy?
I like to keep a lot of doors open, generally speaking, and I like to put myself out there more often sometimes than I should. But for example, I come to meetups like this, and they serve a dual purpose where I get to meet people in the industry, get to talk tech, and I also get to meet recruiters like yourself and like yourself. By the way, it is a pleasure to meet you both. My name is Mike Amakana, and I will be sure to talk to you afterwards. But with that being said, just staying sharp. I feel like if you're going out to meetups, if you're constantly learning new things, it seems like opportunity will just find its way for you.
I'm gonna cut off the questions just because we gotta give people enough time. We're only at number 3. But if you're gonna come and get drinks, everyone can ask you more questions, as long as we limit it to a minute, because there's 4 more people.
Okay.
I'll be listening.
LinkedIn messaging. Does anybody actually read those? Are they worth it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Get lots of feedback. So,
If there's time
Brent-
afterwards, you can continue. I just
I
want to
know.
make sure everybody
I know you
has
are.
no rush.
I'll send you another one.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, thank you. We should probably have like a whole thing about recruiting. A whole conversation.
That'd be great.
about that.
Recruiting meeting.
I'll actually
I
take
got a
up,
recruiting fishbowl.
I'll take less than 5 minutes, I'll make up for that, because that was useful for me as well. I'm Nikki, I'm here, I am with Dago, I am a recruiter, many of you have met with me. If you haven't, here's my card,
I think my
feel
lemons.
free to give me a call. I'm here to talk about the Indy Hackers though. I'm on the Indy Hackers board. Who here knows of the Indy Hackers community? Okay, so a couple. The idea is that tech can be kind of a lonely place. You know, you get involved and you're coding, or you get out of the boot camp and you don't know where to go and who to talk to. The Indy Hackers community really started from that, and it's building a community around tech. So no matter what your tech stack is, no matter what your background is, this is a place where you can just talk to other geeks and enjoy and have people who can talk that same language. I know how important it is. I'm not a tech person. My husband is. He's been in the industry for 25 years. He comes home and talks at me about work, and I kind of learned to listen to his inflection and know when it's something important. That's how I learned most of my jargon, but I still don't know what he's talking about most of the time. So if he goes to meetups and stuff, that's great because it's people he can talk to. So Indy Hackers is a community. We're a Slack channel, so find us on Slack. Lots of great information out there, as well as job boards and stuff. But we do run an annual meetup, and it's going to happen here on December 7th. It's a holiday party. My guess is we'll be at maximum fire capacity of 350. So it's on Eventbrite now. It's a free meetup. Go out and get your Eventbrite ticket. The Hacky Awards. This is our second year of the Hacky Awards. The event has been running for 9 years now. Second year of Hacky Awards, so you can nominate Mentor of the Year, Community Member of the Year, the Rising Star of the Year, Trainer of the Year, Level Up. The website explains kind of who those people might look like. But I would love to see lots of nominations, especially people who are early in. You know, who is your mentor? You can't all vote for Ari, who's great. But you know, who is your mentor? Who are you learning from? And
Yeah.
let's really recognize those people in the community and continue to build the community together. So I think, did everybody get one of these? I tried to get them all out. Good. So I hope to see you all at the holiday party. Big, fun, beer, wine, food, retro games. Hang out for the evening, have fun. All right? I'm sorry, I'm going to be rude. My daughter's sick, so I'm going to take off, but my card's there if anybody else reach out to me.
Okay, take care, Nick.
One second. That's what I brought back. I'm not laughing at you, Nick.
Don't mention my
Not right now, but.
Not right now.
Hey, is this working? Alright, so one of two things could happen. I could give a teeny bit of advice that I learned. My job search wasn't like a very typical one, but I could give some advice to some people that still don't have a job or are looking for a junior role. Or I could just talk to you guys for 5 minutes about some interesting stuff that I've kind of figured out. It's not technical, I'm sorry. I'm not at that capacity yet to be like, here's this in-depth, really cool math problem that I've solved, or here's how I develop cross-platform applications for the police. But I do like to talk, so that's why I put my name on the board. So I just wanted to mention one thing. There are certain personality types that help you sell yourself. Like, I'm from Long Island, so I was surrounded by those people. Oh, you're from Long Island too? Where at?
Glenhead.
What?
Glenhead?
Oh, sorry, man.
It's near Glen Cove.
Oh, okay. Oh, so you're from Nassau. All right, cool. So you're nice. Yeah, nice. Good area if you guys don't know. But anyways, there are certain personality types. I like to talk. I like to sell myself. I like playing that game. And I found that if you're playing a game that you enjoy, it's so much easier to win. And I was able to get an interview in person, which I know is like, apparently that's the third or fourth stage. For me, it was like the second stage, so I got lucky. But the one thing I did learn is they just want to know how passionate you are and how much you want to solve a problem for the sake of solving a problem at the end of the day. Because you're not going to be excited about their 15-year-old code or their industry that has no relation to you. But what you will be excited about is having a problem and learn a totally new set of tools, which I've had to do twice already, just to solve a problem that they need. So they're going to ask you to learn different languages. This .NET, I took the .NET course here, and I think that helped because you're learning that strongly typed language from the get-go. But if you're not showing your passion, no one's ever going to know. So you're still like interviewing or doing tech screenings. If you could get past that stage, like the personal interview isn't even, that's the game you want to play. So I don't really know why I said all that. But what I was trying to get across was that if you ever get the opportunity to sit in front of someone that might hire you, just don't leave the room without them knowing how passionate you are about solving problems or learning new things. Because if you can do that, then it doesn't matter if you have a degree or, if you're in that room, that means they're already somewhat considering you. And you could blow the game up totally if you show them how excited you are, especially if they lowball you on a salary. They love that for some reason. That's a joke, but apparently it's too real. That's how it's laughing. But yeah, so just let them know how passionate you are. That's what I did. I was super nervous for my interview. I was just like, it's cool, Nick, don't worry at all. But then I got into the room and all they asked me about was like, what's my favorite part of software development? Why do you like doing this? Why do you like doing that? And I was like, why are they asking me these questions? And all they care about is how passionate you are. Unless you're working for some strange organization like mine, where sometimes they don't care how passionate you are. I was hired because they needed someone as a junior, but they didn't actually want someone that took like months to get into the group. I told them, yeah, get me in the group, like I could take a day, I don't care. And that was the other thing, some people really do not, they're worried that they're not good enough. I know I have a really good friend from this program that thinks he wasn't good enough and he left, and that really, that upset me a lot. But I also had another friend who was worried, and he's still out there, he's still interviewing, but sometimes you just have to know that you're never gonna be good enough. Like, you really won't be. There will always be like a new problem or challenge that you're gonna get thrown at. I had no idea that you could use XML for transferring data because I'm 5 seconds out of the womb, 5 seconds out of 1150. I had no idea about this stuff. So just try and recognize that too. All right, I don't want to do that anymore because that's a lot of lecturing and I'm not really a lecturer. That's why I didn't like college that much. So I had some questions for you guys. So with your hands, how many languages have you used throughout your career? If you could do this, I'd really appreciate it.
Does that mean that we can only do 2?
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah. So yeah, you could use 10. I mean, you could just be like, don't shoot, don't shoot.
How many languages in a career?
Yeah, throughout your entire career. How many
I would need
languages?
more than
Guys,
10
ask us how
fingers.
many we forgot.
Yeah.
Wow, really?
Yeah, it's
That's
more
a
than
lot.
10.
Yeah, a lot. C++,
So-
all kinds of stuff. C.
Okay.
To answer that a little bit, because I've had this conversation a few times, I think you have to look at programming languages as simply it's an expression of what you're trying to build. It's not all about the language, it's about what you want to build, and the expression just makes that language just makes that happen. So it's kind of like your paintbrush. You have the idea, and the paintbrush and the paint are how you express it. And then you have a medium.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Thanks, Ari. I wanted to just start with that logical block because the next block is I've noticed that a lot of the senior level positions, highly successful people, and I don't want to get into like recruiting and like job titles and stuff like that, but there are a lot of people in this room who have been doing one language for many years, right? Many for me is more than like 7. So you can take that as you want. But Ari, he's really good at using .NET and Xamarin. And there are other people in this room who know C++, and I didn't even know that issues like that existed until you just told me about them. So I just want to know, how do you guys think you can maximize your potential to learn new things? Because sometimes people say, oh yeah, they just naturally get coding, or they just naturally get these new concepts. I find that hard to believe. I find that the natural genius of people cannot carry them all the way up there. Have you guys actually done anything where you're like, I've been using .NET for 5 to 10 years, and then you switch. Have any of you really done that before?
And learn by example. That's
Yeah.
what I think most humans learn by example.
Okay.
So if you want to see an example, and you go, oh, I've seen something similar to that. I can do that. I can use it somewhere else.
And as far as, probably people do code in .NET, I picked .NET just because there were a lot of jobs in that programming language. But I also find it difficult. All of my coworkers have been there, 5 to 15 years. So if they were to just switch and say, hey, yeah, I want to learn Python or I want to learn Java, have any of you had to do that career switch as opposed to like, oh, let me just learn like C++ on the side, or let me learn Golang on the side? Have any of you had to do a major career switch like that? And how did that go? What steps did you actually take, and why did you switch away? Are there really valid reasons for just leaving a stack altogether?
I don't think that's a career switch.
Yeah.
That's maybe a stack change. Sometimes the organization just decides to go into a different direction. I mean, taking your XML comment from before, a lot of us used to have to transmit all of our data first using custom methods, and then it all became SOAP, which was dirty, and then it all switched high. Some people thought that was fine, and then there was JSON, and now everybody's using JSON. But there'll be something else that comes out, our way of using like OData, and then switching to GraphQL, right? So, but all of those, it didn't matter if we were using Python or .NET or C or C++ or Java or JavaScript, etc. The languages are all fundamentally the same. It's all the same constructs. Kind of like you could look at one Latin language. If you knew Latin, you could probably figure out any Latin language, except English for some reason. That's all right. English is like the Objective-C of Latin languages. I made that on the spot. So I wouldn't get upset about that. And that's one thing that you have to be careful about. Like when it comes to the fear of that, I mean, I would embrace fear. Embrace fear and combine it with your passion. And as long as you're okay with, if you accept that this is one of the few industries where it's okay to fail all day, every day, then you can solve anything. Because the one thing that people get in trouble for at most jobs is what? It's failure. We don't have that problem. So we should be able to tackle anything, given enough time and budget.
Well, I just meant at some point, like right now, I'm spending 9 hours of my day using .NET. In a way, it's not a pigeonhole, but when you're using it 9 hours a day and then you go home, unless you're spending another 9 hours learning a new technology or a new stack, how are you able to transition over if you no longer, okay, this is a question. Have any of you been using a stack for so long and you decide that you want to change? Is that a realistic thing that you've ever done? Because it seems like everyone that I've worked with, they started using .NET and then they got paid to do it every day. And then they're like, I like doing this. Like I don't want to just randomly switch for no reason. But
See, I started in C, probably Ari did. I did a ton of C. Then I did a decade or more of C++. And then C# came out in like 2000, 2001. After the company, and they said, hey, how about looking at this? And I was like, God, no pointers. This is going to really, be a dog, and it's going to be really slow. And so we went to C, C# and stuff, and I love that. And then, we did a little JavaScript, and TypeScript came out. But once you've worked in the languages enough, like TypeScript is barely different than C++, or sorry, than .NET. So you get, like Ari was saying, it's almost, once you've worked in languages enough, it really, almost the syntax becomes almost unimportant, really.
It's what you're building, not how you're building.
So I wouldn't say like what Ari said. I didn't think of those as career changes. It was just, we went from C, which was a big change, to C++, because now you're into object-oriented programming. A lot of people got lost in that shake-up. We were hiring small talk programmers and all kinds of people that got object-oriented and taught them how to write C++. But then we got into .NET and stuff like that. But I never thought it was a career change. It was just a new language and another opportunity. That's the way I looked at it.
And language is only one of the dimensions that will have a 3-year career.
Yeah.
like for us, kind of old timers, mobile development came in. So
Yeah.
mobile, that's a whole technology shift.
And agile
Cloud
computing.
And how mobile development has changed.
That's a whole,
yes.
yeah, that's a whole technology shift. All of a sudden, it's not even about languages, but it's about DevOps or
Yeah.
other things now become real that you didn't even know that existed before. Or internet came in.
Yeah. Yeah, the internet changed everything.
Exactly.
There'll be something else. I mean, I'm just
There'll be
echoing
those
what,
kind of things.
what everybody else is saying. You know, I think once you need to build something, if the language that you have is not well suited for what you're trying to do, for whatever it is you're trying to build, you'll go figure out a different language to do it. You know, you'll stumble a little bit, and you know, on that side, I'd say if you're contemplating that, I'd say take something you already have, a language you already know well and are comfortable with, and convert it to the other thing, because you'll learn what you need to get done. That was weird, that thing turned off. But then, if you're trying to figure out, well, when do I need to do that, or how hard is that going to be? I think you just got to go and make that decision. Like, hey, I need to build a mobile app, and well, yeah, I really want to get more into web development, so I kind of go either way. I can go C# with Xamarin, and I already kind of know JavaScript, so maybe I'll go with JavaScript and do like React Native or Native Script, rather than jumping into iOS or Android. But I think your real issues there aren't going to be the language. The real issue is going to be the platform. It's going to be tying all the services together. It's going to be addressing all the constraints of whatever you're trying to build. So you could use C# to write real-time software that runs on a little teeny chip using a real-time operating system. Then it has to be C++. But the demands of an application that has to be no more than 16K in size, and needs to run fanless, etc., are widely different than, say, a web application that has thousands of users, which is different than a mobile application, which is different than a gas pump. All of those you can do with C++, C#, etc. But I think the fun part would be if you're trying to figure out something fun to do, try a different form factor. And that's fun.
Yeah. The thing I'm worried about. Oh, Bob, you want to speak?
Okay, so from the 30,000-foot view, as my interpretation of your questions, I believe you have a fear of dedicating yourself to one stack. Just know that whatever commitment you make is going to change weekly.
Yeah.
You're
You're
going to
gonna be
be
forced to
migrating to
change.
some other problem, and you're going to have to add to it, but at least you'll have a foundation.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah.
That's what I experienced.
It shows well what God had, let's put it that way.
Okay, it's a good start. Think of that.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Sorry I didn't really give a lecture, but appreciate the talk. So.
It was good. It's good. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much for talking, Nick. I really much appreciate it, because it kind of parallels what I was essentially going to go on, at least towards the end, particularly. So the reason why I wanted to get up here today, even though it is my first time actually doing one of these lightning talks, and it's, I believe, my second time being here ever, is because I wanted to talk specifically about my journey in trying to conceptualize a lot of coding as an English major. The reason why I want to bring that up is because you hear a lot of people from liberal arts backgrounds, they hear somebody saying, oh, I'm a software engineer, or oh, I'm a software developer, and they just kind of give you a weird look, and I'm like, I can't do that. I don't know how you're able to pull that off. And I've heard that multiple times from people from liberal arts backgrounds, whether it was from English or from some other type of literature or linguistics, which is more of a social science, but the list goes on, political science, whatever. You run into this problem of seeing people who are artists or people who like to consider themselves artists or working in the arts of some kind, and they don't really conceptualize coding or software engineering as an art. And I really appreciate what Ari brought up earlier and what Nikki mentioned to an extent about the use of language, particularly the use of coding and what Ari said about as a medium, such as painting. The way I like to conceptualize code is through writing, personally, because I was an English major. I wrote papers. I wrote stories. I was a minor in creative writing. So my background with understanding and conceptualizing code is very much writing in the sense of writing a book. I look at a web application as a book that a computer is able to take and read. That's the way I like to conceptualize it. And I'm still very new to learning code. I'm about a little over 2 months into learning at Kenzie Academy. And I'm still kind of getting my footing to an extent, but I have a little bit of background dabbling in C# in my own time. So I came into it not at zero. And I think part of the reason why I've been doing as well as I have thus far, I'm currently actually almost at 100% for my grade in Kenzie. It's still pretty early, but give it time. But I'd like to think I've been doing pretty well, especially if they hired me on as a student software engineering coach. So, you know, it works out. Sometimes it doesn't. But what matters about that is that ultimately I'm kind of in a situation where I'm just getting more and more opportunities to internalize the way in which I understand very basic concepts to you all, I would imagine, you know, arrays, objects, use of, and the assignment of variables, and at least in the case of JavaScript, different type of variable assignments, and being, again, JavaScript more of a dynamic rather than a statically typed language. So a lot of this is not necessarily going to apply at a .NET meetup, and I understand that, but at the same time, I do think it's relevant to talk about the nature of trying to understand all of these concepts from a completely different background. So with that being said, to give you a little more of my background as somebody who's trying to become an engineer, I've always had kind of an architectural mentality when it came to designing something in an artistic medium, whether it was writing or just putting together languages in general. I'm also really interested in languages, and I think that's a very relevant comparison as well. I particularly know 3, and I've dabbled in a few others. But with that being said, I think that all of these things make me come together as a person who was primed towards this field, in the sense that I always attacked problems starting from what I want to accomplish and where I currently am, and then getting the middle part kind of set up and really kind of put together so I can get to that end point. And a lot of that requires some creative problem solving. So, for example, trying to figure out, for a coding example, how do I get this array to return something other than null? Which I would imagine has happened to a few people here every once in a while. You're trying to get something put into an array, and then it just comes out, oh, not a number? No? Okay. Let's try switching this around. But you run into problems, I've noticed, at least when you hit into roadblocks like that, of conceptualizing the problem. And again, going back to my metaphor about coding as writing, I like to understand the parts that come together to make up the whole, which is the end product, this case being a web application. I like looking at objects as characters, and though the properties are describing the character traits of that character. So an object of person has a name, has a few basic details about itself, like maybe an age, which is an integer. It has an eye color, which would be a string, and it has a few things that it can do, like a person can walk, which is an action, and we would write out maybe as a function, a walk function. And they walk with 2 legs, or do they have 2 legs? Those are things you can know through abstracting an object. And you only abstract what's necessary. So, or something like I don't know, let's say a function. Let's stay on the function metaphor for now, because that's all that's coming to mind. But let's just say with a function, you're dealing with different parameters or inputs that you get to that, and you write something out that ends up being very trying to think of a good word for it. And that's another problem that I've noticed with learning how to code. Just the proper convention, the proper appropriate vocabulary, which makes things easier, but can also make things harder at times as well. But thankfully, I've noticed that engineering jargon is very straightforward for the most part. You might get a few weird exceptions here though, like when you start working with Git and you're talking about repos, which are basically project folders. And it's like little things like that might be a little bit harder for the uninitiated. But you begin to notice, and I'm going to be wrapping up here, that code begins to rhyme. And that's what I've noticed the more I start looking at other languages like Python or C#. That objects are still objects, arrays are still arrays, you're still using or accessing the DOM in one way or another. It ultimately comes together with the same parts. Like in a language, every language has sentences, or every language has nouns, or verbs, or adjectives. You run into the same building blocks that ultimately come together to make what you're trying to create. And if I had more time, I would probably expound upon all of this, but I noticed that it is about 7:52, which is getting a bit late in the meetup. So I just wanted to thank you all for your time and just check if anybody had any questions that I could go a bit more in depth for.
Neat.
I'm hoping I don't have to speak with the mic because I need to use my hands too.
I don't know, Mike. You should use the mic, Mike.
Let's see if this. Oh, it's strange. What is this?
Is there going to be video?
Here we go.
I don't know. Let's ask Mike.
Oh boy, I'm going to move over here.
Toughest thing, Mike's gonna plug himself in.
You know, it's you got a little adapter on there.
Yeah, that's what I think.
Testing, 1, 2, 3. Mike, 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 Mike,
I don't know.
Mike. Do I need to turn the projector on?
Yeah, probably. Maybe when I move my mouse, it'll come on.
Well, it'll turn on the TV. Or the confidence monitors.
So I'm going to talk about how many people use HTTP client or make web requests and stuff like that. And almost everybody does that. So I picked a topic that I thought would be.
Did it make a sound? Did I hit that?
Can you hear me? No, the side monitors are on though.
Oh, no, that's cool. It'll come up. It takes like a minute.
Okay.
Just start talking. It'll come up.
Can you guys hear me without the mic? Anyway, my name is Mike Griffin. I've been coding forever in .NET since I guess it came out in beta way back when. So I work in Azure a lot, and we're working in Azure functions and stuff. But they're like sort of serverless like programming. So a function app is typically like if someone makes an HTTP request to your endpoint, and your function wakes up and it does some stuff and it goes away. So in that kind of an application, you don't have IOC dependency injection, all that heavy stuff you have in an ASP.NET web application. So you need to be using HTTP client. Oh, good, here it is. So the typical pattern, you'll see this all over the internet, is this. I'll kind of highlight it here, maybe. Okay. So sorry about that. Yeah. So you'll do a using some HTTP client, create this guy because it implements iSpose. You go out and do some stuff, and then the using will call the spose on it, and great, I just use my resources properly. In reality, you have, if you use that kind of a pattern, that HTTP client opened up a socket connection, and that socket connection is open for 240 seconds after that dispose is called, which means 4 minutes. So if you're in an Azure application or some heavy website, and you're doing that, you're going to have 4,000 and 5,000 socket connections open for a really long time and just sitting there doing nothing. And then you're going to run out of socket connections and your website's going to crash and you're not going to understand why because it's not going to be apparent. The way you use HTTP client is it's reentrant, which means it's thread safe. So what you should really do is create an HTTP client as a static object and just hammer that one instance all the time. Don't release it, don't do anything to it. I'm not gonna show you how to use HTTP client correctly in this code. I'm gonna show you a better way to use HTTP client. But HTTP client has a concept of it's called the base URL. If you set the HTTP client base URL and then talk to it, think of it as a SQL connection, like a database connection, where it's caching the, see how SQL does that, it caches your database connection based on the connection string. That's what HTTP client should be doing, is it caches itself based on the base URL you're hitting. And I'll show you a better way to do that. We use Azure, and we got into some situations where developers were using this pattern, and before you know it, the website starts tanking and going down. And not only that, but when you have 4,000 socket connections open, you're eating a lot of resources away. So I use a library called Plural. It's free. It's a NuGet package for .NET. Let me see if I can blow this up a little bit for you.
That was really blatant. I love it.
Yeah, Ari will like that because it's, let me see if I can show you down here. It is free for commercial use, runs on a variety of platforms, including the .NET Framework, .NET Core, Xamarin, and UWP. So you can use this on your mobile applications.
I've heard of that.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. So anyway, I was using HTTP client, wrote my own stuff, and then I was running into some issues, and I stumbled upon this class library, and I use it everywhere. All of our Azure code is running on this now. So the way it works is you use a string like this. So I'm awaiting, it looks kind of funky when you first see it, on this string. Basically, Plural provides an extension method on the string class, and then it adds these functions. So I can do append path segment. So really this is saying HTTP API column/person. It's going to add some query parameters, A equals 1, B equals 2. It's going to send an OAuth token. It's going to do a post, first name, last name, and it's going to receive JSON, and it's going to deserialize it into this person object up here. So it's basically a one-line statement. Under the cover, it's using HTTP client, just like you would normally use, but it's smart because that string right there, that's what it's, if you think of that as a SQL connection string, it's going to say, hey, do I have a HTTP client under the covers that's using that as a base URL? Yep, I got one. Grab that, talk to it. Because it's multi-thread safe. It can just sit there and you can have thousands of outstanding requests on that one object, rather than creating them and using them over and over again. It even has a mock API where you can test it and do stuff like that. It has everything you need for like gets, puts, deletes, posts, stuff like that. It's really nice. And I'm going to show you some code on how to use that real quick. We'll step through some stuff. So I have demonstrate plural, and I have another function called demonstrate plural with HTTP client. If you're using a website, like when I proposed this to my company, a lot of people said, well, I don't want to use that. We're already getting, dependency injection, and our controller methods are getting an HTTP client. What I want to go and use this for? I'll show you how to use the plural API when you're getting HTTP clients fed from you from the HTTP client factory or something like they're really pushing now in .NET. So let's go ahead and set a breakpoint. I'm going to hit a service that's going to, you can see I'm using this, this is an Azure site. I'm going to hit an authorized controller, authorized method to get an OAuth token, and then I'm going to turn around and pass that token in. See, I'm doing with bear token here, and I'm going to hit the sites API, ask for site 237 with that token. And you can see each one. This is an await statement. I'm appending the path to that base URL. I'm posting my username, password, and I'm saying receive string. And then I'm going to convert that string to an object down below and stuff like that. Oh no, I'm sorry, that's the token. Then I'm going to call, give me the site, and I'm going to say get JSON. I'm just going to get raw JSON, and I'm going to serialize that JSON into. I'm sorry, I'm going to get it gives me a dynamic object, but I'm going to serialize that dynamic object in a JSON to show it to you. Then we're going to call the same API we did up here again, but I'm going to use the generic method and say just go ahead and serialize that into my response. So let's go ahead and hit that real quick. Let's see, I have a URL, I breakpoint right there. So I love this API because every HTTP request I make is a single line. It's just using the plural syntax. So we're going to step over this real quick. I'm going to hit this. Hopefully this will work. I might be waking up our Azure service because it's asleep. You can see I got a OAuth token there. It's a big ugly string. I can show you how to parse that real quick, but I'm not going to do that right now. Let's go ahead and get site 237. I'm stepping over that. You can see that's just a one-line statement. So I actually added a bear token, which is HTTP header. I appended onto this URL. I'm saying take that URL and tack on sites 237. And if I have extra slashes in there, it eats that. So I could say, I could have forgot that. You notice I tacked on a slash there, and there's a slash there. It really doesn't need that, but it knows that and recognizes that and just makes up for all kinds of human mistakes. Let's step over that. So what I got there, that's a dynamic object. And now I'm going to take that dynamic object and serialize it to JSON. Let's take a look at this. In JSON, I got data. There's my data. I got a big, nice site object. That's site 237. So we just did it and we got back a raw object. Now we're going to actually use the generic and get back an actually strongly typed object I have over here created called site. And I don't know if you know this, but if you get JSON back, you can go over here. I won't be too much longer. I know everybody wants to get out of here. But if you just Google JSON to C#, I use this all the time. I think, yeah, this is it. Anytime I have JSON, raw JSON, I copy it in here, and then I hit generate, and it generates me a C# object. Go ahead.
Can I show you something really cool?
Sure.
Do you have that JSON on your clipboard right now?
I probably do, or if I don't, I will in a minute. Hold on, it's right here. Let's go back to my program. I'm still stepping through it. So let's look at JSON.
Yep, go
Hold on,
copy that string to the clipboard, so do text view.
Yeah. So this is exactly what I do. Let's take that JSON.
Yep, okay, now stop your code.
Hold on. I go over here typically, I copy it in here. Well, maybe I do. And I say generate. And that generated me a nice C# object.
Yeah.
Just a poor man's way to get some code from a JSON object.
Mike, before you do that, hit stop on your code.
You want me to stop it?
Yep.
So I actually use that to create this little site object. Go ahead.
So just like create a new class.
Create a new class?
Yeah, so what, like Alt-Shift-C, I think?
I'm so
Sure.
non-keyboardy. Add class.
Yep.
Yep.
You're gonna go crazy when you see this. Hit OK, because you're gonna delete it anyway.
Yeah. I can just leave it, it doesn't matter.
Okay, so just go right above your class.
Right here?
Yep. And go to Edit, Advanced, Paste as JSON. Or maybe it's Paste Special. It might be Paste Special over on the left. I can't see your screen.
Oh, paste special. Here we go. Paste JSON's class. Check that out.
Boom.
No.
Oh, check that out. Okay, that's why these little lightning talks are great. I did not know about that. That is awesome.
Yeah, this'll change your life.
That's sweet. I'm gonna show that. We do show and tells.
The
every
only
Friday.
thing that you want to be careful of with this, it does a great job, and it even like escapes the names of things. So you might need to do JSON properties.
Okay.
For Newtonsoft.
Sure.
But you'll see all the way up on top, it'll have a root object.
Yeah.
You want to basically take all the other classes, cut them, and put them inside of the root object. That way, it's in the scope of the root object,
Yeah,
and then
okay.
just name the root object.
Yeah, and I did the same thing.
Otherwise, you'll have naming collisions if you use this everywhere.
Right. So if you can see my site object, it has a root object too, up here. Well, it's down here. That was the root object. I called it response. It has a list of sites. I just renamed what he just showed me. So that's cool. I did not know about that. Let's just save that and we'll go back into this. That's very cool. I've been going out to different websites to do that. So let's go back in, and now I'm going to show you real quick. So we just hit it with native plural. We're going to step over this code, and I'm going to step into a little mock class. Let's say right here, this is demonstrate plural as if we're in an IOC dependency application that's getting HTTP clients fed to it. Now let's see. Okay, so that was the end of that. Let's go into here. So I'm going to mock a little. Now let's see. I'm going to hit go here. There we go. Let's go into my function. So now, if you notice, let me get this out of the way. I'm going to new an HTTP client, and I'm going to set its base address to the same URL I've been hitting in this presentation. Then I'm going to call a controller method, a fake controller method, passing in this HTTP client, which is right down here below. So let's go ahead and step into that. So notice the first thing I do is I do a Fluro client passing in the HTTP client. Because remember, Fluro client is just a glorified HTTP client that has this nice fluent API on top of it. So if you don't want it to create the HTTP client, it'll just say, hey, you got one? I'll just use yours. So that's what it's doing. So I'm going to do this. And now, if you look at this code, this append segment, post JSON, receive string, I literally took this code right here, this same code, and all I did was replace this. Well, shoot. I replaced that code right there, the await whatever, with this Fluro client. So there I'm saying await Fluro client, because I already got the Fluro client, it's in there. So let's step over this. I think I might have goofed it up. Let's see. I think I might hit go. Are we at the bottom? We are. But let's look at the data. So if you, I just ran through it. It's very quick. So if you look at the token, you can see I got this big ugly token. And then I asked for site 237 again. We look at the site. You can see if I expand this. We got the site data here. So it's just a real quick sample on this Fluro API. He's working on 3.0. It's all free. It's a NuGet package. And it works under .NET Core and Xamarin and all this kind of stuff. Cool. But for me, I like using it because my HTTP requests become as simple as like typical one-liner. So if you want to mess with headers and add query parameters and do everything you could think of to an HTTP request, it's really easy through this API. So similar to what you're doing. And to talk about, where's Mike at, who was up here just a minute ago? Oh, there you are. I want to say something about what Mike said about computer code being like art. What I used to tell my teams is when we created big websites, I would always say, you know, you look at a website, go, man, that looks amazing. But the thing is, you didn't really create that website. You created the code that turned into that website. So the code is actually what you created. The website was just ran through a compiler and spit out and displayed. So when you're writing code, I always say the code should look like the problem you're solving, and it should be like an art. When I used to tell my teams, I don't care if your code works. If I can read it, we can fix it. If not, we throw it out and we do it again. And so back to what, I can't remember what your name was. Is it Nick?
Yeah.
You were talking about different languages. I used to tell my team, you know, and it's true with me, whenever I get stuck and I can't solve a problem, it's always coming back and understanding the data. It means I don't understand what I'm doing, and when I think about it, my code becomes incredibly, you know, short in length and very clean to look at. So that's something that you've learned from people. You'll run into people that can code like that. I learned a lot from people, how to write better code and stuff like that, and it really pays off in spades. So I do think code is art, and it should be like art. And just remember that the code you're creating, the actual text like we're looking at here, is the end product. The end product is spit out by a compiler, but what you're creating is this right here. So anyway, that's it.
Mike, can you go back to your first screen?
Yeah. So you'll still see, by the way, you'll still see code on Microsoft's site doing this, even though they know not to do it. There was a lot of confusion. It was in the last couple of years people really figured out this is not how you write HTTP client code.
Your slide.
Oh, this? Let me zoom out a little bit. Well, I'm going the wrong way here. Let's go to reset. How do you do that? Another thing I use too.
Where you had NuGet.
Here we go. I typically do that and then hit the reset button to get it back to. Is that what you wanted? Yeah. So Plural is a great little class library. I love using it. I use it for everything now. So that's pretty much it.
So it knows like what to put in for the headers, like a baritone is typically in a header or.
Yeah, it puts it in this header under authorization, and you can do things. You can actually go in here and you can actually add your own. Notice I'm doing. Let's look at this one. Set query parameters. That's going to put on your URL. You know, question mark, ampersand, yada yada yada, and stuff like that. With OAuth token, I'm posting JSON async. I'm receiving. I want to receive the JSON back and deserialize it in person. It's very fluent. It's very nice. Yeah, it knows how to do all that stuff. There's a lot here in the docs. So if you go over here in the Fluent HTTP, so it shows you different various samples on how to do things. You can do streaming. You can actually do. Let's see if he shows it in here. There's some really cool stuff. Oh, it can do. What's that? URL form encoded stuff. All kinds of crazy things that you typically don't do but need to. There it is. Post URL encoded. A lot of things need that in the body. It's the URL encoded stuff, kind of old school stuff. It does that, things like that. So here's with headers. with headers, accept equals this, your agent equals that, and then get agent, get stuff like that. So it's typically anything, I've never done anything that I had to break my little ... one line command on this to get it done. And I don't run into resource issues and stuff like that. So always one other thing is, if you notice I'm pointing to the site, I was getting sites, I could have said my URL was /site and then just dealt with that, had one for the other thing and the other thing and the other thing. It's better to get your URL to the core of your website and then tack on the other parameters with the appends, because that way you're really only working with a single HTTP client. It's just quicker and better that way. So, any other questions? 8:11, sorry, I went a little late.
Okay, so does everyone have a ticket?
I got 2, is that okay?
Yeah, it's fine with me, I care, it's only one
Someone
prize.
left and gave me this.
Hey, special thank you to all of our presenters. I don't know if I should do that since I was a presenter. Cool. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and stop the recording.